Sorry about the delay. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Regenesis by CJ Cherryh. So last time, the big thing that happened is that Yanni Schwartz and Ari the second went ahead and hashed things out over dinner. And he is pretty candid and honest with her, and basically says, hey, here's what I'm planning. No, I didn't consult you because A, I'm in charge, and B, this actually works to your previously stated goals and benefits, namely in that it keeps Regenesis in power. And without that, you can't do anything. So basically the plan is to do some development at Fargone, do some development at Eversnow, which is throwing red meat to the centrists' base. So Corain is on board. This means expansion in its own way. So Defense is thrilled. They're on board. And ultimately, this is good for Regenesis and science because it means that other forces are not trying to remove them from power and keep them from doing things. Yes, it means that right now they've had to forego part of the budget that was going towards Ari's city that she's building, apparently. So funding for that has to be slowed down a bit. But other than that, he tells her pretty much everything that he did. The one specific datum that he didn't mention was the individual that he was setting there to be kind of the administrator at Fargone, who was going to be working on this Eversnow thing. And somehow, against all likelihood, Jordan Warrick does, or at least knows this person's name. It's an interesting bit of coincidence there. And the reason we know this, as the audience, is that he gives a card to Justin in a very not so surreptitious way after a yet another dinner that ends not quite as aggressively as last time, but pretty aggressively. He basically pops it right in his pocket, knowing, one would hope, full well that the security apparatus of Regenesis is keeping an eye on it, which perhaps was his plan all along. One does not know yet. Anyway, Justin and Grant express serious concerns about Jordan Warrick because he's acting kind of crazy and aggressive. So they have definite worries. He tried very hard, very assertively to try and get in to the office where they're working. So at the end of this dinner, they are confronted by Florian, who says, hey, we're moving all your stuff to a new office. It's much closer to Wing 1. It's actually closer to where you live. And it is much farther into our little Ari's security perimeter. So we'll be able to better protect you. That previous office that you were in happened to be Jordan's old office, and now he can have that. It's all his. So things are a-changing. But with that yappering out of the way, I think we can move on. Alright, so the plan is to get to around page 200. I'm not sure we're going to have time for that, so I'm going to set a middle of the way bookmark here so that I can, if I have to cut it off early, because I've got, I'm juggling a few eggs at the moment, metaphorical eggs, so I may have to go early. We shall see. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as we start Section 2 of Book 1. Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 1. April 26, 2424. 0500 hours. Gerard and his two companions grew fast this week. The organs were present, just barely starting to function inside the body cavity, largely visible through the transparent skin. Fingers had discernible nails. The yolk sac had gone. Blood functioned to feed the cells. The babies were mostly head at this point because brains, very high-order brains, were developing fast. Nerves were growing out from the spine. Arms had wrists and elbows. Underdeveloped legs kicked, a function of those newly active nerves. Gerard and his two companions weighed only 1/4 of an ounce apiece, but they had some distinction as human. They were becoming, was what? They were becoming what they could be. Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 2. April 26, 2424. 0744 hours. Damn, staff had been busy last night. Florian had taken direct action. The morning's messages informed Ari while she dressed. Florian had gotten Justin and Grant out of range of Jordan's machinations. Well, that was good. She'd been trying to accomplish that for 6 weeks. There'd been the chance, the very real chance, that Jordan might resort to snatching one or the other, likely Grant, for a few hours of therapy. Her staff had been watching non-stop for just such a move. Now they could all relax a bit. But the next line of Florian's report suggested otherwise. A contact number? Yanni's Dr. Patil. Yanni's transcript had included that interview. She'd initially ignored that part of the schedule as probably just one of Yanni's frequent meetings with ranking scientists, and university professors were thick on his usual list. But Patil was clearly a significant name, and Ari did know the contents of Yanni's talk with her. So he did actually tell her that, but she didn't know the significance. Neither, for that matter, do we. Yet. And it wasn't the first time she'd heard the name. Dr. Patil had a set-to with... Dr. Patil had had a set-to with Uncle Dennis about a paper last year. Dennis had gotten mad. He'd threatened to send Patil to Planus, except Yanni had talked him out of it. And Jordan handed Justin a card with that name on it? Damn, was her immediate reaction. Florian suggested Jordan might want to signal Yanni he knew something about Yanni's business in Novgorod. Or maybe there was some connection with the fight Jordan and Yanni had had before Yanni left, which made a certain sense. Jordan wasn't in official communication with anybody but Yanni, had no social contact but Justin, and he had no security clearance beyond library, not all of that, and not even the most basic access to system. That posed a question. A possibly scary question. She keyed a message back to her security, whoever was at the desk. Find out how Jordan got that card. Do anything that furthers that investigation. Then she pushed back from the desk and got up.
It was probably safest not to talk to Justin until the immediate irritation of the disarrangement had gone away. He was bound to be adrenaline high, and that never improved communication, did it? Yanni, Florian's message had said, was already notified. About the move, at least. Yanni wouldn't object to whatever she did regarding Jordan Warrick. But Yanni hadn't heard about this Dr. Patil being linked to a mysterious card Jordan knew they were going to question. That was a matter worth telling Yanni and getting his reaction. And since she'd officially read the transcript and it jibed with what she'd gotten from Base 1, she could at least take that caution out of her thinking and ask some questions. If Jordan had found out that Yanni was talking to Patil, how had he known that? He didn't get mail. He had no way to get a business card. Maybe Yanni himself had dropped information, making the move to rattle Jordan out of his cover. In that case, she had better find out about it. And the worst thing she could do would be to start giving blind orders to put Florian and Catelyn in the middle of it. She put on her sweater, searched her closet for a pair of pants herself. She managed her own wardrobe lately. There was a leak somewhere. Maybe Yanni had arranged it just to see where information flowed. She didn't like to be caught by surprise. And she didn't want Justin involved in any investigation of his father. He wasn't involved in Jordan's business. She'd stake everything on that. And did. But she still didn't want to trip up anything Yanni was doing. Meanwhile, Justin was probably mad as hell about being moved and upset about the business with the card, and probably underinformed overall. Justin, without enough information, was going to wonder about it, and build his own hypotheses in private, even, and just stew for hours. Maybe it was better to send a simple, friendly message to Justin, just a deliberately naive welcome in. Justin wouldn't believe she was innocent of ordering this disruption of his life. Or he might. This time he had Jordan to blame. She might be able to turn the frustration in that direction. She lapped her hair into 3/4 of a braid and let it go. It would be hanging loose in 10 minutes, but she put on makeup at least, and took care about it. Grant had to be considerably relieved this morning to know they weren't going to be working up close with Jordan daily, where it was so easy for Jordan to get at him. Justin had to be relieved, at least, that Grant wasn't involved. Justin would certainly focus his irritation on Jordan, unless she stepped in the line of fire and created an issue and a target. So any message she sent into that ferment of vexation had to be cautious. She sat down at the keyboard and tapped into the secure local net. "It wasn't my order," she typed, which was the truth, "but I think it's a good idea. He can't have the office all to himself. It was bugged anyway. He can have, there we go, let's take it from the top." She sat down at the keyboard and tapped into the secure local net. "It wasn't my order," she typed, which was the truth, "but I think it was a good idea. He can have the office all to himself. It was bugged anyway. Ari." Justin might think that was funny. Or maybe he wouldn't. She sighed, and typed a postscript. "Justin, don't be upset with me. Phone if you have a problem with this." Not that she was going to back down from what Florian had done. It was only moving the schedule up regarding the move to her wing for both residency and office space. Justin didn't know that, but it was the truth. She went back to the console and keyed one more message. Yanni didn't do it either. Then she put on her boots and went to gather up Florian and Catelyn. Straight to Yanni's office, over in admin, before she did anything else, and she did that with Florian. Catelyn was busy with some research. By the time she got there, it was 0840 hours, and Yanni's foyer was already full of problems. She didn't go through the foyer. She took the side entry, the one Yanni himself used, and Yanni's secretary, Chloe, looked up in startlement. "Sarah? Tell Yanni to take a restroom break. I need to talk to him." "Sarah," Chloe said respectfully, and pushed a button on the console. Chloe didn't even talk to Yanni. Yanni came through the door fairly promptly, and stopped cold. "I need to talk," Ari said. "Now." So Yanni immediately opened the door behind Chloe and went in. Florian walked in to stand behind her, while she sat down at one end of the conference table. It was a big one, and Yanni did, at the other end.
"A problem?" Yanni asked. "I had a report this morning that there was some goings-on involving Justin, that you moved him out of Education Wing altogether, fired his staff, and gave Jordan an office. Is this the sudden problem?"
"Jordan is the problem. Jordan wants an office of his own."
"And you apparently gave him one."
"I did, sir," Florian said behind her. "It was done at my level." "I stand by it," Ari said, "if it doesn't actually hurt anything. It didn't seem to me it does." Yanni remained as he was, just looking at her and thinking, clearly thinking.
"Jordan asked me for an office before I left. Evidently, he thought he could get away with going around me."
"He didn't ask me. He said he was going to move in on Justin. So Florian moved Justin to my wing." "Except his staff, sir," Florian said.
"Are you going to talk at me from two different levels?"
Yanni asked, looking from her, seated, to Florian, standing. "Sorry, sir." "If you want Jordan out of that office," Ari said, "you can tell him that. Meanwhile, Florian says he had no place to put Justin's staff, but they're good people, and Florian promised they'd be taken care of. Admin should hire them." Yanni was silent a moment, then nodded.
"All right. It can happen. I'll make a note for Chloe."
"Good. Justin will feel a lot better about it."
"Oh, I'm sure he will. And Jordan's got what he wanted. This week. Hell, if that'll content him for 2 days. Damn the man."
"That's not all he did," Ari said. "He dropped a business card into Justin's pocket. Justin didn't like it. He gave it to Florian. I have it in my apartment. It was from a Dr. Sandor Patil."
"Patil."
He didn't say anything but that. Not after a long wait. So she said, "I brought Jordan here from Planis. It seemed a good idea at the time. I hoped he'd do better than this."
"He's a damn maniac."
"I thought you were his friend."
"With Jordan? Being Jordan's friend requires fireproof gloves."
"So did this Patil figure somehow with why you're mad at him?" "I've read your transcript. I know who she is. Is Jordan somehow connected with this?"
"Not exactly."
"So what does it mean?"
"Let me drop another name,"
Yanni said.
"Tew. Dr. Raymond Tew."
It didn't ring any bell. She was genuinely puzzled, and shook her head. "I don't know him."
"Nanotech," Yanni said. "Biologicals. Former head of the Planis Remediation Project."
So, there. Biological nanisms, living nanomachines, anathema on Cytine, except under strictest conditions. Patil's expertise. Beta Station was where they worked on that, where you had to have all sorts of clearance to get in, and where nothing could escape. Nanobiology applied in the remediation areas out in the Planis death zones where Cytine microbes met Terran ones. But when they loosed something into the biosphere, they did it with great, great caution. Not the wholesale dumping the terraforming planet involved, not the extent of what they were likely to do at Eversnow. "So he's no longer head of that program? Why?"
"Retired. He's lived at Planis since the war was at its height. He's elderly, came from Beta Labs, was the head of research in that discipline, taught at the University in Novgorod for 2 years, moved to Planis when the terraforming project got cancelled, managed the remediation program there until he retired 5 years ago. Distinguished career, bit of a prick."
"He knows Jordan, I take it."
"They were socially acquainted at Planis. Understand, the Planis lab doesn't have the facilities to have done anything of an anagenetic nature, not in the most esoteric sense."
That was the 10-cred word for terraforming, where there was already life.
Let's just say terraforming has been a hot topic behind certain closed doors, including Dennis's, including the military's, and it's been hot for months. Resunsec is currently taking the whole Planis lab apart, and using Jordan's departure as a plausible excuse to look into every nook and cranny of Planis operations, which has made Tew madder than hell. Tew and Jordan socialized. Only 23 primary researchers in the place, off and on, so everybody socializes, you can figure that. But Tew has retained very close ties to the military at Planis and to the university in Novgorod. Terraforming Cytine was going to be his big program. He spent decades laying out all the details for his project, right along with Patil, and Council vetoed it just before it launched. Then shifted him out to Planis, threw him at the sop of an applied project out there because he was madder than hell and not keeping his mouth shut, frankly. When the nanolabs shifted their focus to remediation, it was mostly to maintain the careers of people who specialized in that field. Defense didn't want to lose them, but it also gave us the chance to get Tew away from the media. Because we stopped terraforming in its tracks, she said, shaken out of any sort of complacency. But the military kept the research going, and the crazy centrists still want it applied here. We're giving them Eversnow, but a lot of old business exists out there at Planis. Part of the black projects in the military wing we can't get at, and we don't like, are nanistics of a nature I don't like. Officially, the nanistics program slowed to a stop when he retired. No other personnel was brought in out there, and what remediation uses is very carefully regulated. But lately, with the Eversnow matter, it's back, this time in Novgorod. There's an inherent problem with research labs, you know. They contain knowledge you'd like to have just in case your enemies have it, and that you'd just as soon not have on the public market. And when people who know military things retire, they still know things, and they have opinions. Unless you want to mind-wipe a special, which wouldn't attract too many people into the program. So you think he's been talking to people, including Jordan? It's not Jordan's field. Politics is. Jordan's always been a political animal, and we know there's been a leak to Karain. One we found, she said. You think there's more? One we found, she said. You think there's more? Oh, I think we brought a major item of it here, with Jordan. My fault, you're saying. Having him sucked up by the military wouldn't have helped at all. It wouldn't. She'd prevented that. That was true. Tew arrived at Planis during the war, Yanni said. Quietest retreat he could have. We'd moved a major part of the lab there, in point of fact, because we didn't want to risk a raid on Beta, and that research falling into Alliance hands. The staff moved back to Beta when the war ended, but he'd already gotten on the wrong side of your predecessor in an absolute fury over the cancellation of his programs. So there he was, just quietly aging, still within the Planis labs, not the man he had been, but still within the structure, still doing some work on biologicals for defense, supposedly doing some side work on the rejuve sensitivity issue. He either wasn't allowed to work on the remediation as of 2 years ago, or he refused to work on it any further. It's not totally clear how that happened, and we're quietly asking at this moment. The man has a temper that doesn't always serve him. But he still has his security clearances. He still has some clearance. Though he carried on correspondence with a few people in the university in Novgorod, not all of whom we were quite comfortable with. People who'd gotten burned in the program cancellation. People who leaned just a little to the centrist fringes. Resunsec found it useful to let it continue, to see where the lines of communication led. Granted, nothing classified got out. Meanwhile, he met Jordan Warrick. When Jordan moved out there, not, of course, voluntarily. They weren't close for the first 10 years, didn't even speak. But in the last few, as Tew tended toward retirement, they started up a friendship. We can't prove a damn thing except our quiet in-house inquiry about resurrecting a nanistics project, the Eversnow project, which we didn't say at the time, nor mentioned Patil's name, got Tew very exercised. He breached security, at least within that close community of academics, and contacted a student of his currently and contacted the stupid. Oh my god, there's like no breaks in this block of text. Oh my lord, he just keeps yapping. Here we go. We can't prove a damn thing, except our quiet in-house inquiry about resurrecting an Anistics project. The Eversnow project, which we didn't say at the time, nor mentioned Patil's name, got too very exercised. He breached security, at least within that close community of academics, and contacted a student of his currently teaching in Novgorod, qualified in the field, security clearance, to be sure, but not a contact he was authorized to make. Patil. He'd corresponded with her for years, but all those letters were innocuous. Two scientists are talking about programs, and definitely subject to censors who actually can read in that field. Recall there's a strong centrist bent in Novgorod University, through the social studies department and into some very shady nooks of the rebel chic. Patil's work has a cult following. She doesn't encourage the radicals, but they get excited when she publishes. When she lectures, they show up at her lecture series. If we revive the old studies for use at Eversnow, I want to be sure it doesn't get used here on Cytine by some lunatic with a lab vial. Let me tell you, with Tew retired and Patil's whole operation off at Eversnow, we're actually safer, barring something coming back by ship. All of which I mentioned to you just in the case I should fall down the stairs and break my neck. Please don't. In case, I say, I'm telling you verbally. There is that one very untidy and roundabout link to Jordan Warrick that we do not like, the elderly and sometimes erratic Dr. Tew, who connects with Patil, who's the person we want to use at Eversnow, partly for very political reasons. But while we're going ahead with the Patil nomination, we're also going through the establishment on Planis with a miniature microscope right now. Why did I say miniature? I have no idea. He didn't say miniature. My brain said it. My brain said it, and then my mouth was like, that sounds perfectly reasonable. Miniature microscope. It's just a tiny little guy. You need a microscope to look through the microscope. It's very small. Where were we? Please don't. In case, I say, I'm telling you verbally. There is that one very untidy and roundabout link to Jordan Warrick that we don't like, the elderly and sometimes erratic Dr. Tew, who connects with Patil, who's the person we want to use at Eversnow, partly for very political reasons. But while we're going ahead with the Patil nomination, we're also going through the establishment on Planis with a microscope right now on the excuse of investigating Jordan, and it's why we shouldn't round-trip Jordan right back to Planis at first excuse. If fire and fuel can meet, we just want to be very sure the bottles are secure. Once we ship Patil out to Fargone, we'll feel a lot safer. So they're juggling some eggs. There's some juggling occurring here. But you're saying it's possibly all innocent. Patil's a natural candidate for the Eversnow post, but hauling her from the centrist party to the expansionist side of the slate is going to mightily annoy some people. It's possible certain factions will be more interested in the politics of it than in the actual science, which is years off. Short term, it's very likely to be political. Rethinking the theory of long-period nanistic self-direction. God, where did you run across that? It was going to run in Scientia last year. It was pretty thick going, but I read it. I should think it was. You and the censors. How did you get it? The centrists had made a fuss about it pre-publication, said it proved they could do what they wanted to do on Cytine without killing the rejuve ecology. Uncle Dennis was mad about it. He was threatening to have the editor fired if it ran, so they pulled it. I figured I should give it a look. So she was writing up what she shouldn't have written about? It was an agitation on her part, but a quiet one, the presentation of a theory, not a how-to. The war's over. We could enlist any nanistics expert we want out of Beta, and will, but for various reasons, including the fact she's the darling of the Paxers, the centrists.
I just got lost. The war's over. We could enlist any nanistics expert we want out of Beta, and will, but for various reasons. Including the fact that she's the... Oh, okay. There's an M dash leading into another M dash statement. So it's an M dash to the M dash, not an D M dash. Okay. They need to make, like, the equivalent to... just for CJ Cherryh, and call it, like, the Cherry M dash. So you know how if you're doing a parenthetical, like, you do a parentheses, and then you need to do another parenthetical inside the parentheses, and you use a bracket? And then if you need to go further in, and you shouldn't because it makes you a maniac who needs to restructure your sentence, you do one of the squiggly brackets. They need an M dash within an M dash, if that makes any sense, for Cherry. The Cherry M dash. The Cherry recursive M dash. The CRM. CRE? The CRM. Anyway. Where were we? Right, I was lost. It was an agitation on her... so she was writing up what she shouldn't have written about? It was an agitation on her part, but a quiet one. The presentation of a theory, not a how-to. The war's over. We could enlist any nanistics expert we want out of Beta, and will, but for various reasons, including the fact she's the darling of the Paxers, the centrists, and the military, and could get us the votes. She's our pick for the lab going out to Eversnow. It's a dream assignment for her. She may be the centrist intellectuals' darling, not that they understand half of what she's about, but she does want to see her theories put into the field, and she's how we got the two counselors to shift their vote to support mine, notably defense and citizens. And just to draw a line under the fact of who's in bed with whom, our Jordan spent the last 8 years having lunch with the professor who taught Patil. So these expository paragraphs that Yanni has done for the past couple chapters are brutal, but they're extremely informative, and very worth paying attention to. They do kind of repeat themselves occasionally just to be like, hey, this is the state of play. They're like doing recaps, but they're for events that haven't actually occurred, that we have not been privy to. So they are expository at that point. Exposition! He doesn't have a base-in system anymore, so how did he know about it? How did he get the card? Maybe he wanted us to have it. Maybe he's trying to ask a question in his unique way. That would be an interesting position, Yanni said. Or maybe he just wanted Justin to take exception to the ensuing investigation. To drag Justin into it on his side, Ari said. But I don't think he did what Jordan would want him to do. Oh, it probably was within his guesswork, Yanni said. I assume Jordan expected the card to be confiscated, and Justin to be involved, and upset, and maybe more amenable to Jordan's arguments. He's psych, not nanistics, educational psych at that. I don't like the notion he could have gotten this card from Tew, and gotten it through our screening. Security's got to take a look at that. But it's not much more comfortable a thought that someone here gave it to him, probably with information. It has a reader strip, sir, Florian said. We didn't put it into a system-connected reader. Probably a very good notion, Yanni said. Damn it. Damn Jordan to bloody hell. I'd rather not if I can avoid it, Ari said, but Justin is staying in Wing 1. Granted, Yanni said. No question. Good call. You didn't bring up Patil's name with Jordan. Oh, that's not emphasis on the correct syllable. It's important. You didn't bring Patil's name up with Jordan, did you? Hell no. Just asking, she said easily. It remained a possibility all the same, but less likely, perhaps. So Justin was safe. But Jordan definitely wasn't. Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 3. April 26, 2424, 08:55 hours. Late to bed, late to rise, and not that early to the office. The morning was definitely off routine when you had to rack your memory to recall what your own office address was, and it was entirely surreal to walk in and find the setup pretty much what you remembered, and you hadn't put it there. Justin had expected boxes. The office was just moved. There were things were on shelves in exactly the same order. Apparently so, at least. Florian hadn't exaggerated. "Well," Grant said at his shoulder, "they were neat." "Certainly better than some invasions we've had," Justin muttered, and let go a long, long breath. He hadn't known he was that wound up about the move, but he had been. He didn't see a safe. Opening several desk drawers didn't turn up Ari's material. It had gone somewhere, and that bothered him. "Her stuff isn't here," he said. "Security'll have it," Grant said. 5 against 10, Florian will have gotten it, personally. "Well, it's not a bad office," Justin said, looking around. It wasn't bad. It was even good, given there was room for the two of them. Ample room, but nothing for staff. God knew what M thought this morning, arriving to find he had no office and no job. There was a window. The view from the purported window was fake, but it was a very expensive fake. A screen showed the Novaya Volga from, one supposed, the top of the cliffs, more likely the top of one of the precip towers. He'd never been up there. Nobody went there. Except the repair and maintenance crews working on the weather system, and most of those were robots. It was a dizzying image, if one thought about it. It gave an illusion the whole building was 40 stories tall, when the brain knew for a fact they were on the ground floor. "Nice view," Grant said. "You're such an optimist." Justin ran his hand over the spines of the physical books on the shelf, finding no flaw in the order of them. Printout of this and that psych set. He liked printout when it came to review. He marked up with abandon, and liked things in order, his order. The stacks on the desk looked like his stacks. He thumbed through them. They were in a reasonable order. Likely the stacks on Grant's desk were the same. But he wanted to find something they'd messed up. He checked the drawers. Exact order, exact contents. "I hate it when I don't know what they've done wrong. I'm sure there's something." "The movers were Regenesis, weren't they?" Grant asked. "They're used to not having things look disturbed." That was worth half a laugh at least. There was an in-office coffee dispenser sitting on a sideboard. That was new, and good. The machine was loaded, and it turned on and functioned at the touch of a button. Of a button. That was even better. And the movers had improved on one other thing. The move had organized the supply cabinet contents in a logical, eye-pleasing way, with little colored bins for the various styli and clips and pointer tags. He surveyed it, top to bottom, looking for flaws. "Color-coded," Justin remarked, giving up his search. "I suppose our mess was too much for them to get here intact. We have all new shiny paperclips." "Have a cup of coffee." Grant handed him one, an implicit calm-down. "You know Jordan's going to be beside himself this morning." "Likely he is," Grant said. "Just about now." He took a sip. It was better coffee than what they'd had available down the hall in the old office. Much better. It was probably real. "Pricey." "Free," Grant said. "Meaning we're entirely on her tab." That didn't improve the taste. "Do we ever actually run through our wages?" Grant asked. "We never get a chance to find out, do we? And what about our regular work?" He turned full circle, looked at the walls, the river view, and something beyond vertigo bothered him. Something indefinably bothered him and made his shoulders twitch. He walked across the office and back before it dawned on him. "It's backward. It's damned backward! The back wall is south. The old office wall faced north." "Is that going to bother you?" "It's already bothering me." He was still frustrated. The office had always had its carefully designed clutter. Even his every other layer stacking was preserved in the pile on the corner of his desk. The room was white-walled, had a view that cost a month's pay. The desks were new black lacquer, not brown fake wood, scarred from years of use. Their use. It was like that damned black and white bedroom they lived in, that was what. I want some flowers in here, some pictures that don't move.
I can order the flowers, Grant said, and added wickedly, red?
No, blue, green, purple, anything but red. There was one red pillow, one red flower in their professionally decorated black, gray, and white headquarters. Black, gray, and white quarters.
Maybe you'd like to pick out the pictures yourself.
That nettled him, too. Ordering flowers is not your job to do. You're not my...
I'm not as afflicted by the decor as you are, Grant said. It's a born man problem. You're fluxed. I'm sure I could order flowers in a sane, logical way. Possibly I'd be calm enough to pick out complimentary pictures. Clearly...
Ah, hell. He found his mood improving. Unwanted improvement, even toward laughter. Ah, hell, blue. Blue would be good. Blues and purples, that sort of thing. The single screen pretending to be a window drew the eye and suggested blue-greens and grays. Cancel the purples. Blues and quiet greens. That might do it. I'd like that, if you wouldn't mind doing it. I'm not that logical at the moment.
I'm sure there's something that'll work, Grant said nicely. I'll look.
By computer. You could do anything by computer. It would be there in an hour, if they opted for messenger service, and flowers and paintings could get through security. Oh, by tomorrow, if security was in a good mood. It certainly wasn't the way he'd done things in the days when he'd been free, on his own salary and grants. Before the first Ari had gotten her hands on him. Before Jordan had gotten himself in trouble and gotten shipped to the far side of the world. So Jordan came back, and Ari protected him from his own father, meaning she'd finally gotten her way and gotten him all the way into her wing, to do nothing in his career but teach her. Standing, he flipped on the computer. The screen blinked up. 3 messages from Ari in the upper right-hand corner. Calamity? He dropped into the chair, keyed the messages up. And had to laugh, however ruefully.
What is it?
Ari's postscripts. The first Ari didn't do postscripts. Wouldn't have done a postscript when she was 6. Our girl's done 2 in the same letter. She's worried I'll hit the ceiling. I think she's really worried.
What does she say?
That they're giving the other office to Jordan. That we're better off here. That the old office was bugged anyway. That got a laugh from Grant. Justin keyed off and got up. Let's go out for lunch.
Out for lunch? We haven't gotten any work done yet. I'm just into the flowers.
Lunch. Relaxation. Out of the wing. Prove we can. But somewhere less likely to run into Jordan.
Jordan is going to be heading for Yanni's office about now. If we stay off that track, we'll miss him.
This time he laughed. It made fair sense. Jordan was going to take about 5 minutes to realize he'd been given the office solo, and bet on it, Jordan wasn't going to be working today either. Straight line course for Yanni's office, no question. Not that Yanni would do anything to make Jordan happier. Yanni didn't do it, Ari's final note had said, and she claimed she hadn't done it. So who had? What other authority was there ruling his life? Justin walked over to the desk, picked out the printout he'd been working over, laid the project book, open, on his desk where he would work on it when he got back. There. We're officially moved in and my desk is officially cluttered, so it's home. God knows what the fallout was from that card Jordan handed me. Opening barrage in what's going to be some kind of war, I'm afraid. A war for possession of us, for starters. For possession of Razion, I'm very much afraid. Jordan's not going to win anything, and I don't think he'll stop until someone stops him. And I don't want that, Grant. Damn, I really don't want it. His mood crashed. He leaned on his chair back. He's headed for a fall.
You think she'll send him back to Planis?
Deep down, he actually wished she would, this morning once and for all. And that was so startlingly dark and traitorous a thought that he felt deeply ashamed of himself. Jordan had spent 20 years in comparative privation, shut out of the modern world for a crime his accuser had likely committed. And his own son at least owed him some sympathy for the resultant bitterness, didn't he? But not when Grant was in danger from that sympathy. Ari had created Grant, Jordan had written some of his first tapes, knew at least his initial keywords and triggers, and if Jordan decided there might be flaws in Grant's loyalty and wanted to revise things, he could do major damage. And hell if he'd let that happen, not if it meant Jordan going straight back into exile. I'm going to reread that with proper emphasis. And hell if he'd let that happen, not if it meant Jordan's going straight back into exile. He shoved back from the chair and picked up his coat. "Jordan's not making it easy for anybody," he said grimly. "Not for me, not for you, not for 2 hours running since he's been back." "Why does he do it?" Grant asked, reaching for his own coat. "What does an intelligent CIT want out of this situation?" "Intelligent as he is, I'm afraid intelligence is nowhere in this situation." "You're angry with him." Halfway into the coat, Justin settled his own onto his shoulders. "You noticed that?" "Angry enough to take action against him as you did. That seems justified from my own view." "I'm angry about being uprooted into an office that's just damn backward to what I've been used to for most of my life. I'm angry at being co-opted deeper into Ari's wing. I'm angry because I'm going to miss Abrizio's." "We can walk over there. Nothing's stopping us." "We could run into him." "So you want to avoid him permanently?" "Damn him." "But not damn him?" "I don't know." There's a cute bit of textual shenanigans happening there. So in Jordan's damn it. Because I misread it. That's what the bit of shenanigans is. "We can walk over there. Nothing's stopping us." "We could run into him." "So you want to avoid him permanently?" "Damn it." "But not damn him?" "I don't know." Grant frowned. So all across the horizon, very intelligent CITs aren't acting rationally. Young Ari didn't do a thing. Yanni didn't. The elder Warrick makes a stupid move, and the younger doesn't know what he damns, but he doesn't want to talk to his gene father at all. What was the card you asked me to give Florian? It bordered on funny. It was so stupid. The idiocy of the situation afflicted his already raw sensibilities. At very least, his universe was not on the same track this morning, and he no longer knew where it was going. Not an unusual condition in his life, but not one he liked. "Jordan's likely to be at our favorite lunch haunt on any given day if he's using that office, and I don't want the confrontation. So, for starters, I think we'll walk to the north corridor of admin for a late breakfast. That won't be on his route." He stared disconsolately at the cabinets, finding everything out of sorts. "They've color-coded the damn supply cabinets. It looks great. But are we going to remember to put the clips back in the red box? Should we have to remember? Does anyone care?" "At least your father won't be into your notebooks." "Definitely a point in favor of this place." "And it was originally his office." "It was. It had been." "Let's just get out of here before—" The desk phone went off. He shot a look at Grant. It rang again. It was Jordan's ID. He hesitated toward the door, then looked back. It went on ringing. He swore and punched in speaker. "Dad?"
"Where the hell are you?"
came from the other end.
"What's going on?"
"They moved us. I think we were bugged."
"You think we were bugged? Bloody hell!"
So much for that piece of deliberate naivete. And more quietly, even gently, Jordan added,
"Are you all right?"
He hadn't expected parental concern. That ploy hadn't even been on the radar. It set him back about a beat or two and almost hurt. Not quite. "We're fine, Dad. We are."
"Where are you?"
"Wing 1, where Jordan couldn't come. Not a hope in hell he'd ever get through her security to have a look around this office. They moved my office." And Jordan had to know that the move was for good.
"Are you going to protest this?"
Tell the truth or temporize? Truth was simpler. Kinder, if that mattered. No, actually.
No? No?
Outrage. Truth again? Or was it a lie? Both wrapped together, both truth and lie, likely. Jordan wanted his son to rise up and challenge admin and challenge Ari's existence. But he didn't really expect it to happen, for reasons Jordan thought he understood better than the rest of the universe. It won't do a damn bit of good if I do. It's not a bad office here. More room. Certainly more room than 4 of us and staff jammed into the other one.
Come to breakfast.
Now a lie was necessary. Absolutely the polite thing. Things are in a mess here. I've got some unpacking to do. I've got to find some things.
Supper then. We'll cook.
It wasn't an invitation. It was a challenge to trust. Maybe to come talk about that card he no longer had. And he didn't trust Jordan, not at all. He wasn't bringing Grant and himself through Jordan's doors, subject to whatever they were handed to eat and drink, which might have God knew what in it. I can't.
Arrested?
Just detained. I don't know for how long. It'll ease up. It always does.
Damn it, I'm going to Yanni with this.
So they both went through the motions. The pretense of familial affection. The reality of outrage. Don't use up your credit with him. This was bound to happen. They're not going to like us working together. You knew that when you pushed it.
You mean she's not going to like it?
Look, you've got to settle in, start producing again, start your work up. Let them see you haven't lost a beat. That's what's important. Get current with things. I understand they're going to give you that office.
Current?
All right, yes, I'm sure that's an issue among the younger researchers. It was, and a painful one, which he used only with the faintest twinge of shame. Get a new project going. And since you're in that office alone with Paul, there won't be any question what's my work and what's yours. There was just a little silence on the other side, as if his son's work was going to overshadow his, as if it was any good, no one would believe he did it. That was going to sting. And he did it deliberately, knowing how instinctively jealous and competitive his father was. Jealousy had been the core issue with Jordan and the first Ari, that Jordan wouldn't be second to her. He'd tried to be her equal partner in research, and that hadn't worked, because the first Ari had been smarter than Jordan, just like the second. He accepted that fact of life with his Ari. Jordan hadn't ever been able to. He didn't know what he felt at the moment, but it was perilously close to unreasoning anger, which didn't damned well help in a fencing match with his father.
That's the way it is it?
Jordan asked.
That's the concern she has, just so solicitous to have me look good. Pardon me if I don't buy it.
I don't either, Jordan, but there's a certain assumption around the labs that you're so many years behind the times that you can't possibly overcome.
The hell! The hell I am! And the hell I can't!
It's the next generation, Dad. They don't know you. Just produce. They'll learn who you are.
Who I am? Damned right they will!
Jordan broke the connection right there. Grant lifted a well-controlled eyebrow. Breakfast? Have I mentioned that when CJ Cherryh wants to be dramatically hilarious, she's really funny? Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 4. April 26, 2424, 1302 hours. Message from Hicks, Director of Rezune Security, to Sarah's Security. Consultation urgently needed. It might involve the card. If Hicks was running an operation at Yanni's direction, they'd gotten in the middle of it last night, and Hicks was probably quietly furious at their having swept it up. They could say no. They could hold on to the card and force Yanni to request Sarah to order them to release it. but a feud with Hicks wasn't profitable. Hicks had agreed when they'd outright insisted on their monitoring the business with Justin and his father and relaying what they found to him, and the interview seemed, overall, a reasonable request. "I'll likely be a while," Florian said, while leaving the security station. "All secure here." Catelyn said, "I'll hold things down. It wouldn't be good to annoy Rezunsek if we don't need to." "No," he agreed, "it wouldn't." He took the card with him, carefully protected in an envelope, its disposition dependent on what he heard from Hicks. Maybe he would turn it over, maybe he wouldn't, maybe not, and Hicks would not lay hands on him, not if Hicks wanted his career. He headed out, downstairs, out of the wing and over to admin, to an office that supervised his kind, but not him, not Catelyn, and no one else inside Serah's apartment. Rezunsek was operationally directly responsible to Yanni Schwartz these days. Hicks had succeeded Gerard Nye in the post, and hadn't been implicated in Dennis's attempts on Serah's life. In fact, Hicks had stood down, done his best to keep things calm and safe for most of Rezun, and taken neither side, while Serah's people and Dennis's people shot at each other in the halls of Wing 1. So Hicks had kept his job. Yanni said he was a good man, and since they trusted Yanni, so far, they trusted Hicks, so far. Over to admin, upstairs to the executive level, down the corridor from Yanni's office. The Rezunsek offices were a busy place, even at this early hour. The anteroom was full of people in suits, people in uniform. If he had to wait, he had things he could do in the interim. He went to the desk. "Florian AF, Sarah Ariane Emery's bodyguard. The director called." The receptionist immediately lost the preoccupied look.
"Sir, you're expected."
He stood up and personally escorted Florian.
He has a very high-pitched voice. Oh, he's Mickey Mouse.
He stood up and personally escorted Florian down a carpeted hall straight to the director's office, past cameras and other devices, no matter all the waiting CITs back there. That was gratifying on Serah's behalf. It made a good impression. So far.
Florian AF.
A man with dark hair, dark good looks, and a gold bar indicating a colonel's rank intercepted him and the receptionist both. Kyle A.K., Alpha Azzy, Hicks's aide. "Sir," Kyle A.K. outranked him, and might prevent him, but he would not do business with a substitute. He eyed Kyle A.K. with a certain reserve, just stared at him, at a dead stop, and the receptionist retreated. "The message was from the director," Florian said. "I'll see the director."
"To be sure,"
Kyle A.K. said smoothly, and opened the door that said, "Adam Hicks, Director, Rezun Security," in gold letters. He walked in with Kyle A.K. facing a silver-haired, square-faced man at a desk. Suit, not uniform. That was Hicks, CIT, and never trained in Green Barracks, not an expert in actual practice, only in administration. He'd gotten the services of Kyle A.K., a very highly trained Alpha, former Fleet service. And it was widely suspected that Kyle A.K. was and had been the source of no little policy and no few orders in Rezunsek, but it was the born man who held the office and signed the papers. "Sir," Florian said, "Florian A.F., you called Serah's office." Hicks got up from his chair and offered his hand across the desk, again, proper behavior.
"Florian AF, a pleasure. Have a seat."
"Sir," Florian said, placing hands in the back of his belt and continuing to stand post-handshake as Hicks sat down. He had reached a decision. "Jordan Warrick surreptitiously passed a calling card with a contact number to Justin Warrick. The younger Warrick... I did say Jordan Warrick first? Jordan Warrick surreptitiously passed a calling card with a contact number to Justin Warrick. The younger Warrick volunteered the card to me when I intercepted him on the quadrangle and made no further comment. I think you'll know that from my report."
"Do you have the card with you?"
Hicks asked him. "Yes. May I have your word, sir? We'll have the benefit of your investigation. This regards a person under Serah's authority."
"Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Florian reached into his jacket front and pulled out the envelope. Hicks took it and laid it on the desk in front of him.
What do you know about the card?
Hicks asked. The number, sir, belongs to a Dr. Sandor Patil, University of Novgorod. Hicks's face betrayed very little. He was good in that regard.
Researcher and professor. Did the director brief you who she is?
Scheduled for a promotion to a directorship at Fargone. Yes, sir. Director Schwartz said so in conversation with my principal. Hicks nodded slowly.
How far did he brief her?
Perhaps farther than he briefed you, sir, so I shouldn't go into specifics. Momentary silence. A perusal by very cold, very opaque eyes.
You know about Eversnow?
Yes, sir, we do.
You got this card from younger Warrick.
It was given, sir, volunteered by him.
He got it from senior Warrick.
We observed that he did, sir, unless cards were switched. We didn't search him. Justin Warrick has been honest with us.
Your personal recommendation on the matter, Florian AF?
He drew a breath. We've pulled Justin Warrick into Serra's wing to prevent further contact. That was our immediate action.
Is he aware of what's on the card?
The card was given him without explanation. He wasn't observed reading it. He volunteered it to me, and we ran the address on it. We didn't, however, run the data strip. It seems to us that needs to be done in lab.
We'll do that, Hicks said, with precautions.
Serra will appreciate notification of the contents, whether or not it immediately concerns her security. Hicks's jaw clamped. He was a man not in the habit of letting go of information without knowing parameters in advance. But slowly he nodded.
We appreciate your turning this over, Florian AF.
Serra will take action based on the contents, sir. We will keep your office apprised.
Sit down, Hicks said. For God's sake, sit down.
It seemed Hicks had something specific to discuss. Florian moved over to the chair and did sit down, leaned back, and looked at the man on the level. It was a worried look on the other side of the desk. A CIT with what seemed to be a problem.
What's your opinion on what you found?
Hicks asked. First, that Jordan Warrick may or may not have known what was on the card. Second, Justin had no idea and was uncomfortable with the possession of it in the circumstances. Third, Dr. Patil may or may not know that her information was traded.
What, in your opinion, was Warrick's motive?
We have no current theory except to say he wants his son closer to him and we want him farther away. Closer in the metaphysical sense as well as the physical.
His loyalty, you mean?
The younger Warrick isn't amenable to his father's past politics. He avoids that topic. He has no political leanings of his own.
Everyone born a CIT has a political leaning.
His is definitely not toward the centrists, then, sir. His beliefs run counter to theirs.
So you don't think his gift of the card to you was simply because he knew he was watched? Do you think he would have turned it in under other circumstances?
Jordan Warrick knew they were watched, sir. He's always watched.
That doesn't answer my question.
In response to your question, sir, if he hadn't handed it, I'm going to trip over all my words. In response to your question, sir, if he hadn't handed it to us last night, he would have likely handed it over sometime today, because he isn't in agreement with his father's gesture. He doesn't favor involvement with clandestine matters. And while he regards his father highly, he will equally well wish to avoid any involvement in his father's actions where they may cross Regenesis. He has had extensive experience with your office, sir, and has no wish to cross your path again.
What do you think is going on with the elder Warrick?
Resentment of past confinement and present limitations, a desire to agitate, possibly to inject new energy into a quiet status quo with admin. Possibly a third motive. My information is insufficient.
But your information is current in the case of the younger Warrick. You're quite satisfied that he poses no risk to your principal.
I am very confident of my estimate of Justin Warrick. We wouldn't allow him in the same room with Serra if we were in the least doubtful about his intentions.
What is your estimate of the Patil situation?
I can't possibly estimate, sir, except to ask if it's possible Director Schwartz himself provoked Jordan Warrick to do this. The coincidence is extreme, if there is no causality. Both know Patil, Sir Warwick second hand, as best I know, and Dr. Schwartz has met with her, intended to meet with her at the time he last spoke with Warwick Sr. We know there was an intense argument between Sir Warwick and Dr. Schwartz on that occasion, before Dr. Schwartz left for Novgorod. We don't know the content.
It was an unrecorded conversation, Hicks said. In that, Florian AF, you and I are in the same situation.
Interesting. And there was one, perhaps one, window to ask into that matter. Sir, this touches Syrah's security. Considering Justin Warwick was involved, and Justin Warwick and his companion are under her protection. Eversnow was the topic of dinner conversation between Director Schwartz and Syrah the same evening. An hour later, with no direct contact with anyone we've monitored, Jordan Warrick chose to produce a card with a name on it involving Eversnow in a way he knew would come to the attention of Rezun Sek and Syrah's security. Syrah went to Director Schwartz regarding the card. Director Schwartz revealed a connection between Eversnow and Patil, and between Warwick and Patil via a third party. We find this card assumes a threatening character regarding supposedly secure conversations involving Director Schwartz's activities, and Syrah's security officially calls your attention to that fact. A moment of silence.
Meaning, sir?
Meaning we will act, sir, if we see a problem to Syrah's wing or Syrah's interests, including the safety of present Rezun administration.
You're bright. Tell me, Florian AF, what would you advise we do about Dr. Patil?
Investigate. There's no information yet. The action doesn't seem friendly to her interests, but we don't know with any surety what her interests are.
Facts. The director met with Dr. Patil in Novgorod. They discussed her promotion to a division leadership at Rezun Labs at Fargone, involving a covert Rezun development at Eversnow. Jordan Warrick signals us that he knows Patil, which he does. Possibly more than second-hand, for all we can discover. You know what she works on.
Nanistics. Bionanistics of a secret and restricted nature.
Then you understand the difficulty of turning up information. The military has classified much of her work, classified much of what goes on at Planis. We can't get over that wall, and the nature of what she works on makes a physical search of her premises problematic and dangerous. If she's doing something she oughtn't, or communicating with people she oughtn't, yes, there is a danger.
I would put forward a suggestion, sir.
What would that be?
Let her leave for the assignment, then detain her and her baggage once she reaches orbit. That narrows the problem. She'll either attempt to destroy things before she leaves, or take certain things with her. Hicks's face was habitually unexpressive, lined with years of grim business. An actual smile flickered in the corners of the mouth.
Good. Not actually surprising. What other suggestions, Florian AF?
Syrah's personal security doesn't have the scope or the equipment to take certain steps. You do. We would also be extremely interested to know about any leak of information out of Planis, or into it.
We've consistently taken steps to find out.
Over a period of time, then, a long-term watch. From before Jordan Warrick came here? A grudging dip of the head. Planis staff? Florian asked. Operatives inside the university?
Not all the specialist agents are as far removed from the stations as... Oh, I don't know what words is. Not all the specialist agents are as far removed as the stations in orbit. We can deal with an anistic situation. Clearly, we have mutual concerns, and we've come to a point of mutual interest. You're very much what I expected. Alpha. No question.
Sir?
Is your partner outside?
She remained with Syrah. Internal policy.
Hicks nodded slowly. You insisted on monitoring that dinner at the restaurant. You consider young Warwick yours, and you protect his privacy. Understandable. We agreed to do that. We agreed to that. But we'd like to have all records from that encounter, including anything you know from young Warwick, anything he or his companion may have said in handing you the item.
Hicks had protested their handling it solo. Clearly, he'd had his own observers. The younger Warwick is in our wing, sir. His safety is at issue, as well as Syrah's. We remain extremely concerned about Warwick Sr. being here. We remain concerned about any leak of the younger Warwick's activities to Warwick Sr. And might I point out, I doubt Justin Warwick would have been as ready to offer the card to one of your agents. An interesting thought, a troubling scenario. You'd have had to search him if you'd wanted it, and I'm very sure he wouldn't have liked that. Maybe that was part of Jordan's intention, that Justin get arrested. Jordan didn't know it was Regenesis doing the monitoring that night. He expected you. And that would have bounced it to Yanni's office, and then to Sarah. Interesting notion. But he didn't give that card to you when you met. He sent his companion back with it. Clearly you don't need my answers. Actually, we don't, on that one. He tapped the envelope with the card. This, however, is not in the form of a petty annoyance from Sir Warwick. It's very troublesome. You're certain Director Schwartz didn't set it up? A flat, impenetrable stare. Not to my knowledge, Hicks said, which Florian took for a warning. It could mean, don't ask. It could mean, no, Yanni Schwartz didn't inform me of any trap he was setting, and I don't at all like not being informed. And it could simply mean, there's a leak somewhere, and I don't like not having clues. Are you sure of your own staff in Sarah Emery's apartment? Oh, are you sure of your own staff in Sarah Emery's apartment? We're all Azzies, sir. We're contracted. A leak there isn't highly likely. Certain of the staff came from General Security. That was Wes and Marco. A few elsewhere. I can't flip pages. A few elsewhere from sources that passed clearances. Infiltration is possible, but not likely. My point is, we can't work at cross purposes. You're 18, and there are 2 other security agents besides your partner on your staff, am I right? Yes, sir, I am, and there are. Hicks made a V of his hands, looked at him a moment. Your predecessor was very good. I knew him. I knew him tolerably well when I was an assistant to Gerard Nye. We cooperated. Yes, sir. Time before he had existed was not emotionally attractive to him. There was no resonance for him with his predecessor, such as born men expected to exist. And this was a supervisor who should know that trait. Florian remained engaged, wary of verbal traps. Your predecessor set precedents, Hicks said, set up frameworks of cooperation with my predecessor's predecessor that lasted into Gerard Nye's administration of this agency, until the first Ariane's death and the birth of her successor. And I'm about to invoke one of those arrangements. I can place 3 squads of my people directly under your authority as Wing 1 security, establishing the same sort of arrangement my predecessor had with your principal's office. 2-way information. A very discreet 2-way flow. It's not safe for you to keep us in the dark, or it's not as safe to have our operations crossing one another at critical moments, and I'd rather prevent that. Interesting offer. He did know about the prior arrangement. He'd expected to ask for it himself, once Sarah took control of admin. He'd expected to get it without question at that point, whether or not Hicks was still running Regenesis. It was a little surprising to have it offered to them without asking. You're worried about Patil and Warwick, he said to Hicks, but only the dilation of the eyes betrayed Hicks's reaction. There's a leak, and you don't know where it is. Yes. Frankly, yes. And I'm concerned about Warwick and Warwick, the latter being inside your perimeters in the most sensitive area of Regenesis. I'm aware of the protocol that existed before my time, but name its details, sir, if you would. 30 Beta and Gamma class agents, all dedicated to maintaining your security envelope at your orders, full access to Regenesis information, exactly what the first Ari had, with an appropriate clerical staff and an administrative office sited in Wing 1. We could assign supervisory protocols to the director himself, or to me, personally, if you were satisfied with that arrangement. I'm aware what specific arrangement the first Ari had with Gerard Nye, sir, and your offer is acceptable if Sarah is the supervisor of And your offer is acceptable if Sarah is their supervisor of record. Her youth, My partner and I are alphas, sir, and she's our supervisor. Technically, in actuality, sir. She has been capable of directing us for a classified length of time, but you may at least conclude it wasn't yesterday. Hicks regarded him at some length. You're still 18. I'm very good at what I do, sir. That got a smile. The best supervisors could be like that, able to appreciate an Azzy's humor. And one had to be wary, not to get sucked in and set too much at ease. No buttons available, sir. She has all mine well catalogued. The smile persisted. I'd expect that. I add one more qualification. These agents, their contracts go to her, specifically. Not outright refusal, but wariness. That's not what was. That chain of command may have killed her predecessor. Certainly it was a weakness. My partner and I have studied that arrangement very closely. Their contracts will be solely to her, sir, or we can't accept. Also, should we find a problem in any mindset, that agent will be directly dismissed and sent to retraining. Hesitation. I can understand your reasoning, but you weren't ready to ask for it. You have a lot of responsibilities inside the walls, yet you don't feel ready to deal with this increase in scope? Supervisor's question. I personally find no great advantage in declining your offer, sir, until under the terms I name. You see a need. You made the offer. Should we decline it, we run risks we both foresee regarding Sarah's safety. Should the offer turn out to involve less cooperation than we know we need, we will have to decline it, also for security reasons. You think this office has problems? I have some reservations, knowing a leak of information happened somewhere. We know our own staff. We don't know yours, sir. Does the offer stand? It stands. She'll require their contracts and their manuals, pending her approval of this arrangement. If I approve here and now, and I do, the deal is done. Sarah will agree. A frown. Irregular transfer of contracts. My predecessor had similar power. You knew him, you say. You knew him, you say. Your predecessor was very much older when I knew him. He's dead now, Florian said. My partner and I intend to do better than that. A moment of silence. Quiet, Hicks said. Quiet. Done, then. Done, then. Done, comma, space, then, period, end quote. Hoo-wee! Part of me wanted to transition to like a W, a baby bush, but I'm glad I didn't. We'll save that for later. I have to work on that one anyway. Is our children learning? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. Where were we? I got lost. Done then. Quiet. Done then. He turned to the console, entered a program, and a stick popped up. He passed it across the table. Valid for every individual in the file. You can reach their contracts and their personal manuals with this clearance. They're yours. They're Sarah's. They're Sarah's. He amended that. For a born man, Hicks was very easy to work with. Plain, direct, and saying what he meant, at least on the surface. Hicks would have the job fairly securely for the next 20-odd years, until the next Gerard came of age, if he succeeded in the next few. His office might have problems, so might any office in Rayzune at this point. Sarah wasn't in charge. Other, lesser people made decisions. And within those 20 years of Hicks' office, they were going to face the same threats their predecessors had consistently faced, namely a fair number of people wanting power, or having power and intending to hold on to it. Yanni was intent on holding power on Sarah's behalf. There was less likely an indication of treachery there, but there were questions, and minds could change over a decade. The security breach at Planus and Yanni's dealings with Patil were very likely a case of Yanni trying to ferret out the known problems of a prior generation before Ari had to inherit them, rather than a born man trying for power of his own. But that was an inquiry he planned to make, via the resources which this expanded staff would give him. At very least, Hicks and Yanni and the rest were on their guard, and motivated. If anything adverse did happen in Rezun in the next 20 years, life expectancy for the chief of Rezun Sec would be commensurately short. Likewise the directors. Sirah's life was at issue. Primarily Sirah's, most clearly. Any enemy getting power would immediately want a new Ari clone to work with, or see all Union space thrown into a power struggle. Certain enemies might think that they would like that event, but only the most fringe elements, or Alliance agents from outside Union space, could benefit from losing Ari altogether. Domestic enemies, sensibly bent on unified power, would need to have people on staff at Rezun to make sure there was a third Ariane Emery. Those were the ones to worry about most acutely. Their ambitions were far more local. Some individuals with those well-targeted motives might be inside their perimeters, and Jordan was only the visible problem, the most likely focus of trouble. "A pleasure to cooperate with you, sir," Florian said, and took the data stick, got up and gave a little bow. "If I have the requisite materials in this, I'll handle the other details."
"Done," Hicks said. "And that stick is clean, by the way."
"Of course, sir," Florian said pleasantly, with every intention of passing it through protocols, even considering it came directly from the man who saw to the safety of all Rezun. "We can't say that about the card's data strip, but we'll look forward to the information."
"Pleasure,"
Hicks said, and looked as if he meant it. So that was that. Kyle A.K. was waiting to show him out. Florian walked out of that hall, out through a reception area where the number of waiting CITs had nearly doubled. Elsewhere in the system, in other offices, a number of security-trained Azzi were about to hear a keyword to disturb them to the depths. They'd be notified of a reassignment to new specific operations with special training. They'd be excited, anxious at the same time, vulnerable as their professions never let them be for any other reason. It was his job and Catlin's, and Wes's and Marco's, to settle the new security staff in their duty and handle the logistics. They'd have residency in Wing 1. They needed to have it. But unlike their own hand-picked domestic staff, they'd never come into direct contact with Sirah, not until he knew them specifically and by experience, and until Sirah had had a close look at their files. Patil was a useful first question for them to try their new Rezun Sec access on. The quality of the information that query produced would tell them more about Hicks than about Patil. Hicks himself might be the more vital question. When people gave things gratis, looking into the origin of the impulse was a good idea. And when the rumor said there was more than one authority inside the office, and that Hicks wasn't the strongest administrator Rezun Sec had ever had, that fact was worth noting. In the meanwhile, Florian thought, passing the outside door, in the meanwhile, and with their own careful examination of what Hicks handed them, Rezun Sec's close cooperation with Sirah's staff might prove useful.
Heck with it. We'll bang it out. We'll keep rolling.
Doesn't help if I remute myself. Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 5. April 26, 2424. 15:38 hours. After brunch was an extended but less than productive day trying to arrange the backwards-feeling office. in which they waited, continually on edge, for another call from Jordan. Damn it. But at least their current cases had arrived in the paperwork ported over from the education wing. Justin doggedly slogged away at a routine check of a psych record, a 15-year-old Azzy up at Big Blue who'd had extraordinary scores in work study, a cheerful-looking girl with freckles on her nose, and a quite amazing ability to troubleshoot problems in a handful of aging bots. It was a mechanical aptitude that had never manifested in the THT-382s, possibly because no THT-382 had been faced with a broken bot and a looming production deadline. Strong ethic to succeed, strong bond with her CIT supervisor, who was about as old as the bots, and a deadline. It was a good combination. Create those desires and skills in the THT-382 path, and they had a new training route with a fairly complex technical slant. Rayzune liked to keep a strong theta presence in a given gene pool, good in good practical sense, good hand-eye, ability to fix the plumbing before the water rose, as the first Ari used to put it. But more than that, it was a diverse, adaptable gene set. All sorts of things cropped up in the THT-382s that were good traits in a population. The mechanical ability was a revelation. Alpha types, mentally top-end and having more delicate psychological needs in order to function at maximum, found employment mostly inside Rayzune, very few outside, until a settlement reached a need for higher-end management, and then only a few, specialized in admin, usually, very few in science, went to that assignment. That is a mystery of a sentence to me. My brain did not parse that well. Mostly because there's commas on everything. So I'm... An alpha closely paired with a Born Man Special, the CIT equivalent of an alpha, those sets were all at Rayzune, or at Planus, or at installations like Rayzune Space. His pairing with Grant, Jordan's with Paul. God, there was one mortal waste in his father's situation. Paul and Jordan hadn't done a damned thing useful in 20 years, and the stagnation had to be killing both of them. So I'm going to reread with punctuation intact that first lengthy sentence, which has a page break. Just so you know what I'm up against. I like to do this occasionally with CJ Cherryh and other books too. Alpha types, M-, mentally top-end and having more delicate psychological needs, comma, in order to function at maximum, M-, found employment mostly inside Rayzune, comma, very few outside, comma, until a settlement reached a need for higher-end management, comma, and then only a few, comma, specialized in admin, comma, usually, comma, very few in science, comma, went to that assignment, period. An alpha closely paired with a Born-Man Special, M-, the CIT equivalent of an alpha, M-, those sets were all at Rayzune, comma, or at Planus, comma, or at installations like Rayzune Space, period. His pairing with Grant, comma, Jordan's with Paul, M-, and then it goes to the God, there was one mortal waste in his father's situation, period. Paul and Jordan hadn't done a damn thing useful in 20 years, comma, and the stagnation had to be killing both of them. Anyway, I'm going to reread all that without punctuation, and we'll move on. Alpha types, mentally top-end and having more delicate psychological needs in order to function at maximum, found employment mostly inside Rayzune, very few outside, until a settlement reached a need for higher-end management, and then only a few, specialized in admin usually, very few in science, went to that assignment. An alpha closely paired with a Born Man Special, the CIT equivalent of an alpha, those sets were all at Rayzune, or at Planus, or at installations like Rayzune Space. His pairing with Grant, Jordan's with Paul. God, there was one mortal waste in his father's situation. Paul and Jordan hadn't done a damned thing useful in 20 years, and the stagnation had to be killing both of them. There wasn't a thing he could do about it. Jordan and Paul were sitting over in his office by now, stewing, not getting anything done, not only because they were so far behind it was going to take years to catch up, but because Jordan wasn't ready to get started catching up. And Paul, who was totally innocent of anything but loyalty to Jordan, was suffering right along with him. Maybe, if he could find a way to work with Jordan, he could fix the situation, get Jordan moving again on something creative. And maybe that was at the core of what Jordan wanted. Come bring me up to speed, give the old man a hand, put us back where we were, before Dennis Nye framed me for murder. The revenge part of it, that wasn't going to go away so readily. That he didn't know how to cure. Jordan had tried working with Ari Emery. That didn't work. Jordan could work with Paul, but Paul didn't work at all while Jordan was emoting, and if Paul was currently trying to deep study his own way back to what he himself had been, it was under impossible conditions. Jordan was scattershot at the moment and mad as hell, and Paul was suffering. Paul was still functioning tolerably well in the crisis, socially speaking. Jordan, being a born man and a special, was not that well organized. Jordan was damned pissed, and intent on everyone around him knowing it, intent on everyone acknowledging he'd been wronged, whatever it was that would satisfy him. And by all evidence, nothing ever would satisfy Jordan. His enemies were dead, and reborn, and 20 years of his life were gone. Meanwhile, his son, his personal rebirth, had gotten entirely pragmatic about those missing years, and had stayed current with his work, and was living under the current Ari Emery's thumb. That was what was eating Jordan alive. Well, he couldn't help it. Couldn't change it. He wasn't going to change it at Grant's expense, no matter what kind of pseudo-filial impulses surged in his gut whenever Jordan pulled one of his pity fests, damn him. No, and no, he wasn't going to divert himself and Grant from a comfortable career doing useful work to go join his father in self-destruction. Selfish, maybe, but this version of Ari had a certain hold on him, too, and it wasn't hate. Memory of the first Ari, even that had had its good spots. One really bad one, but some good ones, too. Memory of the second, a kid with a gift of guppies, a teenager upset as hell because her first attempt at seduction hadn't at all worked. The two weren't the same. Opposite ends of the age spectrum for sure, but they weren't the same. Isn't that what the whole program is about? Jordan had asked him. Yes and no. If and maybe. The kid was brilliant. The kid was sopping up deep teach on science at a phenomenal rate. He didn't know precisely at what rate. He supposed Yanni knew, but he didn't. Just, her questions were getting scarily top level. Her integrations challenged him, taught him things in a field he'd not had contact with in years. A little love of guppies hadn't blunted the great genius into uselessness. It might even have unwound some knots and let that phenomenal mind work at full capacity. But you couldn't tell that to Jordan, who was still dealing with his own devil, his own Ari, and couldn't see that anything had changed. Stop everything he personally was doing, detour for a year or so to rescue Jordan from his 20-year gap? Maybe he was a selfish ingrate. Maybe he should spare a couple of years out of a long life. And every time he thought about doing it, his stomach knotted up. A couple of years couldn't make Jordan happy. He could take Jordan off to the wilds up by the new lab they were building and do dedicated deep study, until he could get Jordan factually up to date, and Grant could meanwhile work on Paul in that isolation. He'd actually thought about it. But what would they have at the end of it? An up-to-date Jordan who was never going to accept Razun the way it was, who'd given him that card, damn him, knowing they were being watched. Jordan had done it deliberately, knowing he was going to run his son and Grant straight into an inquiry. If he'd done it because someone in security would have spotted that card. Jordan would have been disappointed if they hadn't. It was bait, was what. It was Jordan stirring the pot, seeing what would happen, maybe hoping his son would be stopped, harassed, that the card would be confiscated and gone over by security, and so would his son be, which would throw him into a funk where Jordan could psychologically get at him, or maybe bring Grant running in distress right into Jordan's hands, or maybe get him severed from Ari's company and put under equal suspicion. And what was the number? What in hell was Jordan doing? The thing was radioactive. You didn't want to touch it. The room they were in was bugged beyond a doubt. He couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand it a moment longer. Grant. Keystrokes stopped. Did you chance to look at that card? It wasn't chance. Heartbeat bumped. Leave it to Grant. What was on it? He asked. A number. What number? It had the form of a personal number. I recall it. Do you want me to find out? Grant asked. No, he said, and made a sudden decision. He didn't want Grant involved, didn't want to be on record doing anything furtive. No, I will. He windowed up the message function and shot a query out straight to Ari's security office address. What was on the card Jordan gave me? Do you know? The answer came back fairly quickly. A contact number at the university in Novgorod, a woman named Sandy Patil. Do you know that person? He typed, Not a clue. The answer came back under Ari's household ID, no further name telling who he was talking to. Senior lecturer with a specialty in bionanistics. There is no apparent connection with Jordan. What is your theory? His heart began a series of labored beats, old familiar fear of a flavor he'd known for all the bad years, the 20 years when the Nyes had run Razun. He typed, Is this Florian? Catlin, sir. My question? I have no idea why he would give me that number. I don't know this woman. I have nothing to do with her field. Her field has nothing to do with my father's either, as I'm sure you're well aware. Grant had gotten out of his chair and leaned over to see the screen, set a hand on his shoulder. His heart beat harder and harder, the old instincts awake and alert. We don't know the reason of this contact, sir, or of his giving it to you, but the restricted military nature of the professor's research urges caution. Bionanistics. God. Manufacturing? Genetic machines? Experimental, self-replicating life? Military secrecy? I have no idea, he typed. He's never mentioned any such contact to me. What would you have done with the note if you were What would you have done with the note if you were well disposed to obey your father at the time? Thump. Thump thump. I suppose I would have looked up the number. Maybe I'd have called this person in Novgorod if I were a total fool and wanted to know what it meant or where it led. I'm not a fool. And I'd hope my father knows I'm not. I'm not interested in his old business, whatever it is, and I think he knows that, too. He added that last sentence and felt like a traitor for reasons not entirely well defined. He manipulated Azzy minds for a living, and his own motivations eluded him. There damned sure weren't connections of experience with Jordan left for him, nothing but an identical biology. Catlin, I'm entirely upset by this situation. Understandable, came the answer. So you have no inclination to pursue the information? None whatsoever, he answered back. Be aware that information or devices involving Dr. Patil could pass in forms very difficult to detect. Take precautions in any future dealings with your father, with this in mind. I take the warning. Thank you. Catlin signed off. He did. He felt sick. He didn't move. He felt the pressure of Grant's fingers and finally got up from the chair, knowing, damn them all, that everything he said was being recorded, watched, parsed, combed through. Security's upset. I can't blame them. Nanistics. They don't want the experimental stuff on a planet, particularly the one we happen to live on, particularly the one the radicals have wanted to terraform for the last century or so. Damn. Damn it, Grant, I don't want any part of this. What is he doing to me? What does he think he's doing? Grant shook his head slowly, helplessly. Logic tells me he wants you involved with him in his situation. Beyond that, it hit like a hammer blow. He could have said it himself 10 times, even thought it himself, and not heard it quite the same way. But from Grant, in that calm, reasoned way Grant struggled to navigate CIT emotional insanity, it made utter, reasonable sense. Jordan wasn't Azzy. Neither he nor Jordan had, as Grant liked to put it, their logic set at the foundation of their reasoning. No. They were born men, and born men grew up by chance, not by tape study. Emotions ruled their actions, foundational and inescapable. Flux thinking at its finest. Jordan had created him out of his own gene set, and Jordan had lost him. Lost him to Ari, who had done things to Jordan's work that Jordan couldn't counter, and the new Ari was co-opting him out of Jordan's reach. "The government didn't kill him for killing Ari," he said aloud, to Grant's worried look. "They could only exile him. So he figures whatever he does, exile's the worst that will ever happen to him. He created me. He wants me back. He's making his best play." "To get you on the outs with Yanni." "To get us all sent to Planis, where he ran his own little world." Things clicked, just clicked, all of a sudden. It might have been a prison, but he ran it inside, and Ari ripped him out of it and brought him here to put him under what he sees as close house arrest. He's not grateful for it, not once he got here and saw the way things are. He's damned pissed. He wants me to break with Ari. He wants to create a situation. I don't know who this Patil is, or how Jordan got that number, but Patil isn't really the game. Subterfuge, secrecy, and politics. Book 1, Season 2. But Patil isn't really the game. Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 6. April 26, 2424. 1659 hours.
It's him. Maybe he hates Patil. Or maybe there's something actually going on, and he doesn't give a damn about it because they're trying to use him. The old radicals. Hell, I don't know how they could have gotten to him, but he won't play anybody else's game. Just his own. Always his own. The hell with anybody else.
Interesting observation, Ari thought, sitting beside Catelyn at the console. The audio clip ran to its conclusion.
Will you go to Yanni?
Grant had asked. And Justin,
"I'm going to give Catelyn another phone call. I'm not taking this. I'm not taking this from him. He wants us back under suspicion. He wants us arrested. He wants me upset. He'll make himself the martyr so we both get sent to Planis, back to his private kingdom, and he has years to work on us. Damn it, Grant, you're right."
"Did he call you?" Ari asked when the clip ended. "Yes," Catelyn said with a nod. "He did. He said—" She keyed another clip, listened, then made it audible.
"He doesn't give a damn about this Dr. Patil. He's after me. He wants to get me at odds with admin, and better yet, he'll get us all sent back to Planis, where he has a base."
Why would he pick Dr. Patil?
Recorded, Catelyn asked.
"I've no idea. An outside and problematic contact he once had. Somebody he didn't really know and doesn't care about. Maybe somebody he hates. I just don't know."
Catelyn stopped the clip. "Jordan Warrick is a very interesting person," Ari said, "and now Justin's quite angry at him. Jordan's supposed to be good at working, with a capital W, very good. I wonder if he intended all he got from Justin." "Warwick Sr.'s behavior seems self-destructive," Catelyn said. "Not only self-destructive," Ari said, "he'd gladly take us with him. He seems to want things back the way they were before I was born, and he's bound to be frustrated with me. There is a solution to this," Catelyn said. Kill him, Catelyn meant. It wasn't legal to do, but that certainly wouldn't stop Catelyn and Florian if she ordered it. and very likely Yanni wouldn't let her or them take the consequences for it. There was far too much invested in her, so she could even get away with it under the law. But not in Justin's eyes, and the likelihood that Justin would find out sooner or later, oddly enough, that was the first stop the thought ran into. Not the law. Justin. Jordan was just very, very interesting. Someone from the first Ari's time, a piece of the puzzle of the first Ari's life and death that had been missing all these years. Everyone had said Jordan was a problem. He certainly was. A very high-powered problem. He was attempting to work his son, whatever else this was about, and Justin possibly had it figured out entirely accurately. It was also clear Jordan Warrick still had secrets. The first Ari had wanted him for a partner. They'd worked together productively for a while before their personalities clashed. Politics had been part of it. The centrist party, and with their program of stopping further explorations, concentrating Union into a tight, strong knot, so that their longtime rivals over at Pell's Star, the Alliance, had to concentrate there too. So no one would be expanding. If mankind went on exploring and expanding and trying to outrace each other to likely stars, expanding so fast they had to use birth labs to multiply fast enough to keep economies going, the centrists feared that so much use of birth labs was going to change mankind. And that was quite true. It was changing the balance in the genome. It had already, in much more than the genome, than just the genome. There were differences between them and Alliance and Earth far other than genetic balance. But psychosociology wasn't the reason why Jordan had aligned with the centrists. Oh no. His reason for taking their side was that the first Ari and most of Rezun was expansionist. The first Ari's whole life's work was expansionist. And, not too strange to say, Jordan had taken up corresponding with the centrists and their more radical branch at about the same time the partnership between himself and Ari had broken up. So figure that Jordan didn't really believe in the centrist party or give a damn about their fears for the future. He'd just used them. Interesting. Interesting. We're going to watch him, Ari said. Yanni's managing this so far. I'm sure you'll tell him there was some sort of a leak when you think it's right to do.
Hicks has given us agents to be totally at our disposal, Catelyn said. 30, with clericals.
This was news.
Because of Jordan Warrick? Perhaps. Sir Warwick, Dr. Patil, Dr. Tew, and events unforeseen. We laid down conditions to our working with this staff. Florian is over at the barracks going through their records, analysing the abilities of what we've been given.
A permanent gift? From Hicks?
Permanent, yes, Sarah. Much like the protection the first Ari had. High-level Rezunsec, with accesses. Only Florian said we wouldn't take them except if you hold the contract, Sarah.
The first Ari's guard. They were contracted to Rezun itself?
Not our predecessors, but yes, the others were. Your predecessor never internalized the staff Rezunsec lent her. She rather used all of Rezunsec, but we think that may have been a problem, that her security staff wasn't wholly hers. We're taking care of that. You need to hold those contracts.
To be inside the apartment? She was a little appalled. We need domestic staff.
Those are coming, Sarah, but we were offered the others. They can have a barracks here, in the wing, an adjunct office with computer ties to Rezunsec. We're moving out the rest of the records storage and taking over the guest apartment on the first floor. We can cancel everything if it's not a good idea. But there's room for them on the first floor, down by the old lab, and they won't be in the apartment. We wouldn't let them in until we're very comfortable with them, though I'm sure, when they are contracted, that they'd like you to be there, Sarah, if it's all right.
That was a natural thing, an emotional thing, and it would cement the contract in that sense. She'd be their supervisor, the CIT they'd come to in distress or in need. To be remote from them was unacceptable. And she'd told Florian to see to staff. He certainly had. She'd turned them loose to see to things, and they'd done it without making a ripple in her own schedule. Maybe a bit widely, but all the same, they had the chance to gain loyal personnel. That wasn't a bad idea. "Of course," she said. "Of course I will. When are they coming in?" "Soon. A few days. The domestic staff should get here first. Florian's checking on their progress while he's down the hill." "You've been very quiet to be so busy." "These are things we can do. I hope we've done them well enough." She'd been completely lost in her work, her deep study, and her own tracking of problems down in Novgorod, out of touch with domestic issues, so long as her clothes appeared clean and her breakfast and supper arrived mostly on time. She walked about with her head stuffed with population equations and spent her days in the first Ari's population dynamics designs. She'd reached a point, a strange point in such study, when whole disciplines had begun to come into focus, as if the brain had started assembling all the scattered bits of what had been her predecessor's operations 2 decades ago, and put it all together. She was at that critical point, damn it, on the verge of overload, and she just went there on any stray thought, far, far from the needs of domestic staff. Her head ached, literally ached, from the effort it was to jump between the real world and the first Ari's world, and back again, to try to grasp the underlying reasons for the ethics her predecessor had installed to patch what had already been done at Novgorod, laying down the commandment to work, and the necessity for recreation, and above all the mantra, "We are different as our world is different, and our different world is a valuable resource." One sec, there's a worm here. Banished. Banished to Southampton. I have no beef with Southampton, but I've got to find new locations other than Detroit, Hoboken, and the Nether Zone. So I'm going to be picking out random locations. Where were we? Right. Laying down the commandment to work and the necessity for recreation, and above all, the mantra, "We are different as our world is different, and our different world is a valuable resource." Hell, that was dangerous. It was sweeping, it had no exceptions, it was potentially troublesome, and the first Ari had dared embed that in the tape, high and wide, which was the way she worked. 500,000 Novgoroders kept voting against terraforming, and, as he originated as they were, and... What the hell was that? It sounded like somebody beating someone to death with a stepladder. If that happens again, I'm going to have to check on it. Because if somebody's getting murdered, I'm going to need to know about it. Hell, that was dangerous. It was sweeping, and it had no exceptions. It was potentially troublesome, and the first Ari had dared embed that in the tape, high and wide, which was the way she worked. 500,000 Novgoroders kept voting against terraforming, and, as he originated as they were... Oh gosh, it's a... So there's no M dash, but she ends that in an M dash. Oh, this is wild. I love her to death. I would not trade the way she does syntax for the world, because it's very organic. But it's also very difficult to read aloud if you're not careful. I swear, this stuff is easy to read, relatively easy to read in your head, but it's not, it's reading it aloud that's the challenge. As ever, I urge anyone listening to these, do find yourself a copy of the book. I should probably start including, ISBNs or something. That probably would be a good idea. So that people know what I'm working with. 500,000 Novgoroders kept voting against terraforming, and, as originated as they were, and doggedly devoted to work for validation, they had deep suspicions about CIT-descended centrists and about proposals for terraforming, and were increasingly inclined in the last 10 years to favor red-brown architecture, one might note, the color of Citeen's outback. Was that significant? Was that going to produce a problem integrating into Union ethic as a whole, where her predecessor had done other interesting tweaks in local mindsets? "Sarah?" Catelyn asked, and she blinked. That was how she was lately. That was the territory where her own thoughts wandered, and the choice of protective and service staff, essential to her safety, became just part of the overload. "I think it's likely very fine what you've done." She brought herself to short focus on it and tried to integrate it into her... She brought herself to short focus on it and tried to integrate it into her concept of her household and how it was all going to work, and Catelyn was right to persist in getting an answer out of her. You couldn't make mistakes with Azzy. You couldn't just contract them and throw them away. And it was scary, thinking of all the changes racketing around her. She had 2 people in all the world, Florian and Catelyn, that she trusted to be competent and devoted to her. An array of people like Sam and Yanni that she trusted for other fields, but when it came down to it, it was Florian and Catelyn who would keep her alive and give her time to pursue those abstracts she chased through the maze of records. They reported to her. They made choices. In this case, they'd made one that affected the household around her. And more security. Her life, certainly, maybe Union's survival, depended on her bodyguard's judgment. "I have no doubt of you," she said briskly to Catelyn, totally focused for the moment on the here and now, and Catelyn's fair demand for her to back them or not. "Do what you see fit to do. Did Justin stay in the winger today?" "Working in his office since a late breakfast, Sarah. So is Grant. Perfectly cooperative. Jordan called him. Justin left the office and went to breakfast. There was, however, no contact between them beyond that. Justin and his companion spoke only to the waiters at the restaurant and to each other. And he, of course, communicated with me. Jordan stayed in his new office with Paul and rearranged things. He found 2 bugs. It wasn't all." Ari gave a perfunctory laugh, not wholehearted, more wistful. It would be so much nicer if Jordan weren't an enemy. Does Justin like his life, I wonder? Is he mad at me, do you think?" "Grant is content," Catelyn said. The Azzy she could judge quite well. The born man she didn't attempt. And that was, of course, a correct answer. "I wish I could turn things around with Jordan," she said. "I wish I could figure how to work him. But he's stubborn, and he knows all the tricks." She gave a sigh and got up from the console. Paused then, looking directly at Catelyn, a second time sharply focused on the present, and on Catelyn's and Florian's problems. "Sending Jordan back to Planis wouldn't be good, would it, if he has a network there? I'd planned on Strassenburg, but he'll work the Azzy there and try to change them, and they're all foundational to that city, and that would be a big problem. I could build an ethic around him in that population, but once he's dead, what will that do? He'd be a rock in the stream. Everything would bend around him. Forever." Catelyn shook her head. "I'm sure I don't know any answer, Sarah." "Unfortunately, I don't either," she said, and went to her bedroom and her private bath and took a headache remedy before she took another deep study pill and went back to her bed, leaving everything to them, going back to what she had to do. There'd been a garden once in legend, a perfect garden, but there'd been a snake in it. The woman hadn't known what to do about him, and every problem of humankind had started from that. The snake had done a working about knowledge and pride, and the woman had gone off her path and taken all her descendants with her. She had her own snake under close watch, And she couldn't let concern about Jordan disrupt her concentration. Not when things were starting to gel, not when her essential job for the next few months was absorbing the sum of several sciences, dosing down with cats so often she could almost go deep state the way Catelyn or Florian could learn, just by thinking hard, and become only the thing she was absorbing, without objection, without question, just wide open to unquestioned knowledge. Sorry about that. Checking to see if it's something I have to deal with. It's not. Not this instant. You had to trust the tapes. You had to really trust them to dose down that far, or to go that open. You had no resistance when you did that. You had no way to say no. You had no extraneous thoughts. You just recorded, embedded the knowledge as fast as possible, burning it into the brain's pathways. Strong, strong, strong pathways. There was only one source of tapes she'd trust like that. The first Ari's tapes, stored in Base 1, tapes recording Ari 1's, Ari the First's thoughts, her opinions on technical questions, her data, her projects, her working life. If there was any personal prejudice embedded in those records, any working her predecessor had designed for her beyond the obvious, it was going into her head too. It was going into her head too. If she'd had the choice, if she'd had the leisure, if the world hadn't been as high pressure as it was, and if the legislature wasn't boiling with important decisions Yanni was trying to handle, if all those things were so, and the world were safer, she'd have taken less of the deep teach drug. She'd have taken longer in her learning. She'd have stayed near enough to the surface to let a little of her conscious mind work on the problems, and see more critically what she personally thought. But in Dennis Nye's fall, Union had gone quietly into crisis, and civilization could make some serious missteps while she lazed her way through, learning at an ordinary pace. So she took the dose she did on her off days and gave up critiquing her predecessor. She wasn't giving up her conscious mind in the long run. She banked on that. She was strong-willed, she was psychologically knowledgeable, she knew the tricks a person used in working another, and she had a good memory for where and when she'd learned something, right down to the session. If she ran up against an ethical problem, she'd do her own thinking. Eventually. She had tags on all of it. Was it her own thinking, for instance, that had let her matter-of-factly consider Catelyn's matter-of-fact offer simply to kill Jordan Warrick? She might have been shocked a few months ago, but maybe not. Dennis had been trying to kill her. Ultimately, they'd killed him. That was a lesson life had given her. Was it her own thinking, still, that said doing away with Jordan might still be the better, safer answer? That said there might be a way to do the deed quietly, and that Justin might not stay too long in mourning if she did it very cleverly? She said no. She said no. That was the one mentality in the transaction she could entirely identify. That was her saying no, and not clearly knowing whether it was the first Ari's pragmatic sense or her own soft-hearted inexperience behind that answer. It was scary. 2 days ago, she'd taken Pooh Thing out of his drawer and set him on the dresser so she could see him from this bed. She'd been too old for him. Now she was old enough to want contact with the childhood years he represented. Poor battered bear. He'd been through a lot. Dennis, in the main. But never discount her predecessor's intentions, battering her mind into a pattern she was supposed to follow for all her life. Was rebellion stupidity? Or was it just her genetics snuggling around the first Ari's precepts, hard-headedness and arrogance trying to find a convenient shape to settle into? She wanted Florian tonight. She really wanted Florian. But she and he had so much work to do, so very much work to do. Things about the household which kept them all fed and safe, in a Regenesis that didn't all want them to stay alive. The dose began to take hold. Critical thinking ebbed. The machines started up. A gentle, repetitive tone, warning the tape was about to start. She had to press a button to get it to go on. She had that much volition left. Beginning. The Novgorod designs, the overall structure. Maybe nobody should examine their own world that closely. She'd been out in the world, however briefly. She'd seen the world from the air, seen it from the ground, gone through its corridors and met its violence. Now she was working directly with the ethics that drove it, examining the ethics set into the Asi who had been the foundational citizens. Did she intend to tweak that mix? She could. She could subtly, by sending in other Asi into key positions, shift the whole Cytene electorate. She could set others at work at Fargone, where Ollie ruled. She knew Ollie's ethical structure. She had a copy of Ollie's personal manual down to the day he left. She could skim it at high speed and recognize ordinary structures from special ones. She could design Asi to fit around Ollie, no question, the foundations of something special, around one that she'd loved when she was little. She could make all Fargone Station into Ollie's image. Ethics were the stop marks and the directional choices in a psych map, and she knew set after set of the classic ones, the ones from before the first Ari's time, the ones designed by committee. She knew the ones that had the first Ari's peculiar stamp on them, like those key sets in Novgorod and at Gehenna, that the people that would rise to the top and become important, the leaders, the movers. She could replicate that at Strassenburg. She could do something else. Yes, she could. And something else was her choice in building that place. Surveillance of past projects like Gehenna was her job, the key thing that the first Ari had created her to do. Be the watchdog. Steer the directed populations in a good direction. Understand. Change at need. Know the program and know how to change it. Strassenburg would always be closely tied to Regenesis, and it would be hers. Her chosen gene sets, her chosen CITs, her designed psych sets, never part of Novgorod or any of the rest of Cytene, something new under the sun. The thetas she was about to manage for sheer practice would be the foundation of a site where her programs ran, not her predecessors. Every problem case in Regenesis was currently worried that the new facility might serve as a gulag for her opposition, and in fact she had thought of creating a little secure lab there for the likes of Jordan Warrick. But there was a problem with secure labs, and the Patil incident had demonstrated that, hadn't it? Abundantly. Secure labs were full of very bright people, who could be very devious if they wanted to be. And getting a special like Jordan involved there would jeopardize the far more important reason for Strassenburg, that the whole town was itself a lab, a control for herself and for her successor. She wanted to see what her designs grew into, isolated from those at Novgorod. She intended nothing antithetical. Yes, she intended nothing antithetical to Novgorod, unless intolerance for other ideas was a time bomb developing in the first Ari's design. Within decades, Novgorod would meet something on its beloved planet that wasn't Novgorod, when it had been the only true city in the world for all the world's existence. Novgorod had had some experience in tolerance, tolerating Regenesis itself, Regenesis' autocracy, even needing an Ariane Emery and voting for her programs. But would they tolerate diversity when it wasn't their brand of diversity? For the good of the planet, they would have to. or their idiosyncrasy became a problem that she would have to handle with subsequent population surges. And what she did carried through generations. That was the point of everything. Ultimately, it was people you were dealing with, people whose psych sets might have been planned like a jigsaw puzzle, groups of the one psych set clicking into place with other groups of another, and tending to bond and procreate with individuals of like psych set, so there was a certain persistence of type. That was setted in, too. All part of integrations. No apparent problems in Novgorod, so far. Even the abolitionists might be healthy. At least people disagreed with the majority. So let Novgorod meet something else. In her time, in her successor's time, let two separate psycharchologies is not a word you tend to expect, so I apologize. So let Novgorod meet something else. In her time, in her successor's time, let two separate psycharchologies learn each other. That would deliver a poke to the urban organism downriver to see how it wiggled. It might also guarantee that her successor would need to exist. Azzy felt a certain pride in the continuance of their type. It was part of their sets. But was it wired into what was basically human? Curious, curious. She was able to compare herself only against the first Ari. Her successor would at least have a broader field of inquiry in that department. And perhaps her successor would found yet another colony just to check things out. She thought if she were that Ari, that thought would certainly occur to her. But that would complicate the situation long term, when populations merged and met, as they would when the world grew. Too many variables spoiled the soup, to mix a metaphor. Forgetting that they were dealing with living, self-willed people spoiled it too. Too much deep study, too much immersion in the theoretical, the give and take only of electrons, not the behavior of whole organisms. The world was more complicated than theory ever yet predicted. That was why she was important. That was why she was important. It was her job to see things coming and figure out how to shift the demographics without conflicts. A machine didn't work, mixing in yet one more metaphor, if it was all one homogeneous piece. Neither did a city, or a species. Finding the glitches was her job, her problem. Man started out analyzing his environment, graduated into understanding his own psyche, graduated again into analyzing the behavior of the human species en masse. That guaranteed employment for several of her kind, didn't it? Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 7. April 27, 2424. 0117 hours. Florian was back. Excuse me. Let's just take it from the top. Heck with it. Book 1, Section 2, Chapter 7. April 27, 2424. 0117 hours. Florian was back from down the hill. Late. Exhausted. He fell into bed in the dark, and Catelyn rolled over and asked, face to face, brow to brow with him, "So, what's the story? Do we accept these people?" "I didn't find anyone to object to. I've interviewed them. I've ordered them into a single barracks, 2 days of special tape. They'll be firmly under our orders and initially operational by, I'd think, the 15th of next month." "Good." She eased an arm around him. She was tired herself from hour after hour at the screens and running up and down stairs, seeing to the move. He was tired from a day with Hicks and trekking from one end of Raysoon to the other, meeting upon meeting with down to the labs and the barracks, back to the offices, meeting upon meeting with prospective help. Has Sarah asked after me? She knows where you've been all day. She's very busy in her studies, but she approves of what we've done. Good. He pulled her close, bestowed a weary kiss on the forehead. She wasn't that tired that didn't get a reaction. But she stayed tracked, business first. There was an interesting development on my side today. Oh? Justin called me. Called us. He wanted to know what was on the card. He wanted to distance himself from that inquiry. But he also wanted to know. The penalty of interesting information. Florian pushed her back enough to look at her. Yes, pushed her back enough to look at her eye to eye. Curious about the card, is he? Curious and worried. He's conflicted. He wants to know and he doesn't want to know. On my own judgment, I told him about the Novgorod doctor to see what his reaction would be, and also to warn him about the nature of the danger. He didn't know her, not even by name. I ran the clip of his call for Sarah to hear it. Interesting, Florian murmured. And what did she say? Much the same. She found it interesting. Hands moved and stopped. Do you think Sarah's going to call me tonight? Definitely she won't, Catelyn said. She skipped supper again and went straight into deep study. She shouldn't do that. I said so too. She said she'd have a big breakfast in the morning. She's pushing herself again. It's not good. It's not good, Catelyn agreed. I think she feels we're in danger. I think she suspects something she can't identify, the same as us. What's unusual? Florian said. It was the old game, the childhood game. Find the change. Find the anomaly. Find the problem. Jordan, she answered. Jordan being in Justin's old office. The card. He tossed the list of unusuals back. Yanni, this Dr. Patil, the new colony, the new wing, the new township. Am I missing anything? I think, Catelyn said, that the card fits Jordan. Jordan wanting Justin to get caught. Justin giving us the card and being angry at Jordan. Justin calling me this afternoon. Sarah's studying late, Florian said, night after night. She doesn't feel she's ready, or she's looking for something. Yanni coming to dinner right after his trip to Novgorod, talking about Eversnow, which Patil is going to run. Connection. Hicks suddenly giving us all this staff, which he was prepared to do before I walked in, which meant he could have prepared to do it before the card ever came up, or only after he knew about the card he didn't have yet until I gave it to him. Does the card show him some specific danger, or is he trying to plant a spy on us by giving us this staff? Sarah pulling Justin into the wing, Catelyn said. She didn't even exit the wing to talk to Yanni. Yanni came here to talk to her, so she's still regarding our warnings, but she pulled Justin inside our perimeters. She may be going out of the wing more often than the last couple of months if we have this new security staff, Florian said. That exposes her to danger. Would Hicks want that? We're about to have domestic staff down in prep, Catelyn said. That's an exposure. Hicks seemed to relax once he had the card. He seemed more friendly. That's an emotional assessment. He's a born man. He has authority, despite what we hear about the office, and he is cooperating. So what do we conclude? Catelyn asked. That something's moving. 1. Jordan's stirred up. Justin is. Raysoon is. That's 2. And we still don't know what Eversnow and Patil have to do with anybody. Something's moving, Florian said. Florian agreed, and once we have more staff, sooner or later Sarah's going to be outside the perimeter we've established. We've just got to watch out for her. It's all we can do. And follow up on Justin and this card. Sarah won't like it, Catelyn said, but we have to. Justin Warrick is the one piece we can move. We have to. Or we have to ask Yanni about Patil and the card, and I don't think he'll tell us the truth. Do you think Hicks will tell us the truth, once he has an answer about the card? Emotional assessment. No.
Not for free. So I don't want to ask officially, not when we don't know who talked to Jordan and why he gave Justin that card.
Catelyn heaved a sigh and put her arms around him. He put his around her. They had sex, purely a tension reliever, mutual release, mutual pleasure. Afterward, Catelyn said, side by side on the same pillow, "At least we'll have help on staff. We'll have more to do for a while, watching the Watchers, being sure Hicks isn't our problem. Good news, if he's being honest, and if his staff is. And we know there's danger outside. But we've been shut in the wing for so long there's a risk of Serra losing touch with outside, isolating herself from Raziun, from Novgorod. She can't afford that. She has to go outside sooner or later. That's coming. We just have to be sure of our own staff. That's basic." "True." He shut his eyes and relaxed with his partner, a long sigh flowing out of him. They could rest, the few hours of someone else's watch. Marco and Wes took the night shift in the Wing 1 office. Those two they could trust. They did know at least Justin Warrick was safer than he had been, thanks to them getting him into a new office. The question was whether they might have opened another window for an attack on Serra by letting Justin in, and yet another by accepting Hicks's offer. There were very many, very skilled people they were letting into the wing. Catelyn objected to things. Catelyn was always suspicious, and Catelyn had agreed with him in this. He wished she'd seen a major problem up front, because the transition to outside made him very, very uneasy. And that is where we will leave it for today. We will continue this mañana. Or, in the next installment, whatever. So yeah, things are moving along. Plots are plotting. Things are happening.
And I don't remember things. Anyway, life moves on. There was something salient. When I have my schedule. Oh, I keep forgetting to update the playlist. It's been like 2 weeks. Oops. I need to get around to that. I'll try and do that today or tomorrow. Oh, geez, we have comments. Let's see. What do we got? Who's leaving me comments? Ay. Here we go. Ikarikuma Q1K comments on Regenesis, of all things. "I'm listening to all of your readings of Cherry and really enjoy the way you do so. Could you please consider reading her Faded Sun trilogy? Thanks. Let me add that to the master document. I will do that very thing." Go. And let me actually add it to the master list. That would probably be a good idea. I believe I have a copy of that, for what it's worth. I can't actually remember if I've read it or not. I have a Cherry backlog. Where's the master document? There it is. Faded Sun Trilogy, CJ Cherryh. Boop. We'll get to that. Other comments. What do we got? What do we got? On Absolution, Pier Sticks comments, the mutter section in here is incredible. The way you did her voice almost as if it were in slow motion, like when characters in sci-fi movies try to talk while trapped in some time dilation effect, was fantastic. They follow up by saying, I think that what happened to the Mutter after seeing Area X is the most realistic reaction of any character in all the books. Everyone else, like the biologist, were either sociopaths, or Gloria were already dying and nihilistic. The Mutter was just a person trying to do her normal job who got shown the inevitable and utter destruction of humanity. Of course it would break her. And if I'm recalling that part of the book correctly, she's only getting like the merest glimpse. Absolution makes things really weird by being kind of like, oh, the scale and scope of the Area X problem isn't just one of an anathema dimension unfolding and superseding our own, but it's also expanding out not just through space but through time. Is kind of the big oh shit moment there. At least that was kind of my read on it, and maybe I'm wrong in that. And it's just, oh, Area X has just been around a lot longer than we would expect. I kind of prefer my read on it just because it makes the prequel factor of it a lot less pat and a bit less, oh, you know how this ends up. Where it's like, oh, well, you think you know how things are going to end up, but, like, they might not actually, and you don't really know. Let's see. Tomash.644 comments on, I can't tell if that's Annihilation or, not Annihilation, the third one. What's the third one? Acceptance? It might be Annihilation. It is Acceptance, though. A note on the movie. Dan Olson, Folding Ideas video on Annihilation and Metaphor, gave me new eyes to see the movie through. I feel like it stood much stronger when viewed as its own story, using the setting and themes of Area X to explore the ideas about pain, rather than as an attempt to retell the story in the book. Broadly agree. I think as a movie, it holds up quite well. I think it's quite good. I think as a representative product, it's not all that. But I say that about a lot of things. So it's like, it's like, a good example would be Armored Core 6. I think it's a very fun action game. It's even a very fun mech action game, more or less. It is not, however, a good representative of the Armored Core series. It's not an Armored Core game. It is a fun action game where you play as mechs. It is not an Armored Core title. Those have certain expectations. That has a certain series of minor requirements that have to kind of be in there, that have been in every single one. Bar, you can argue Formula Front, but Formula Front's a weird one anyway. Like targeting lockboxes, but that's, I think, even in Formula Front as well. You can go manual in Formula Front, and I'm trying to remember if the PS2 edition had, which is the only version you should play. I much to my shame, played the PSP release of Formula Front, and it ain't. It almost soured me on every subsequent Armored Core title. I was like, oh, if this is the direction the series is going, it's rubbish. It's not. It wasn't. It wasn't. So that wasn't a big deal. So yeah, no, I get what he's saying about Annihilation, the movie, where it's like, judge it by its own metric. It has other messages to give than the book does, and I'll agree that it does that pretty well. I enjoyed the movie. I think I'm on record as saying that I enjoyed the movie. I just don't think it's tremendously representative. Like if you go into watching that movie, Annihilation, expecting it to be like the book, it's not going to be that. If you go into reading the trilogy after watching the movie and expecting it to be like the movie, it's not really going to be like that either. Which isn't to say that they're bad or it's bad or anything. It's just, it's different, and different can be good. And that one was pretty good. It was well done. I'll have to watch that video he's talking about, though. Anyway, that is enough yapping out of me. I've got to go answer some texts. Deal with some stuff. Let me, while I'm here, though, flip ahead and see how much because tomorrow is going to have to be a short one. I'm going to have to make tomorrow short, unfortunately. Oh, actually, that'll work out perfectly. It'll be shorter than this one. It won't be as short as I was afraid it was going to be, so that'll be fine. We get to book 2, which is about a little more than a third of the way through the entire volume, interestingly, for anyone who cares. Part of me has been tempted, like some old books on tape that were done on cassette that I have in my collection, where they'll tell you what page they're starting on and ending on, and then, obviously to flip the cassette. For those too young to remember what cassettes were, they had a magnetic strip that contained information on it. And if you flipped it, you got a different part of the cassette. A different bit of data that would get scanned, so you could double layer it if it was worth a damn. Kind of like, LPs, if you know what those are. If you don't know what those are, well, so back in the day, we took vinyl and we, engraved a groove on it, and we squished the vinyl with a thing with the groove ingrained, and then, we squished both sides, so that you could put a needle on the groove and it would make noise bits, which is the worst explanation of how a record player works, but you're going to just have to live with it. There was a brief period of time when the Russians/Soviets were making them out of old X-ray scans. So if you get an old period Soviet-era record, check to see if it's got bones. I learned about that a little while back, and kind of floored me. I was like, oh, that is an interesting use of material at hand. Anyway, with that, I'm going to go.